coming from. It says coverage of parental nutrition requires that a beneficiary must have a permanent impairment. However, this does not mean, or this does not require, that there is no possibility that the beneficiary's condition may improve sometime in the future. If the medical record, including the judgment of the treating practitioner, indicates that the impairment will be of long and indefinite duration, the test of permanence is met. So the standard, like I said, is 90 days. So parental nutrition really wouldn't be covered in, say, a patient that had a functioning GI tract that just needed to put weight on for upcoming surgery. That's where coverage is kind of precluded. It's vague, but to me, this statement also kind of verifies that there can be coverage for less than daily parental nutrition. You can improve over time, and it kind of states that it doesn't have to be a complete permanent impairment. So there's a way to improve over time. So next slide, please. Okay, so the conclusion. Like I said, I'm taking a multiple page product or document and making it as simple as I could to give you just their language and rationale for coverage, because sometimes these can be difficult to be paid under Medicare. So they kind of finished their policy by saying that parental nutrition is life-sustaining to those unable to meet nutritional requirements by oral and enteral intake. I think that statement is very important. It also goes on to say, and this is kind of the catch-all criteria here, is that parental nutrition is considered reasonable and necessary for a beneficiary with severe pathology of the alimentary tract, which does not allow absorption of sufficient nutrients to maintain weight and strength, commensurate with the beneficiary's overall condition. So that is the nuts and bolts of the new policy. So if you were familiar with the old coverage criteria, it had a 2-page flow chart, and you would have to go through that flow chart and kind of line everything up. This new criteria is definitely, I believe, more favorable for someone that did not really easily fit into that old criteria. I also want to mention that with Medicare, there's no process for us as a provider to get all your documentation, send it over to Medicare, and ask them, does this patient qualify? Is this what you need? It does not work that way. There's no predetermination or prior authorization process. It's up to the provider to review the medical records, and then the provider certifies that the patient meets the criteria. The provider then attests to Medicare that they have all of the required documentation in their possession. And then at that point, once all the I's have been dotted, the T's have been crossed, we could submit the claims to Medicare for payment. And then what happens is Medicare then performs various audits going forward to make certain that providers are following the rules of coverage and are in possession of the required documentation. So next slide, please. So how can you help your provider? How can you help your provider meet these guidelines to where they are, following Medicare's rules? So first off, make certain that you follow up with your ordering physician at least annually. You need to be seen at least annually to certify continued needs. So when we're audited, we need to have something from your physician within that last year showing that you were seen, and the doctor's certified your continuing need. I know with patients that have been on many decades, sometimes you don't see your physician, every month or 3 months. It may only be annually. It's really important that you alert your provider if you're hospitalized. Providers cannot bill your TPN if you're in the hospital. So, if you order 7 bags on a Monday for a Wednesday delivery, and then you're, hospitalized unexpectedly, you need to reach out to your provider, let them know you have been admitted, and that they don't need to send your parental nutrition, until you are going to be discharged. The last statement, and probably the most important one, is one of the requirements is the need for the provider to have contact with you prior to sending your parental nutrition each week. So we refer to this as a refill request, and Medicare requires that we have contact with you, either written or oral. So it can be, an online order, an email, a phone call. And we have to document the date that we communicate with you or your caregiver. We need to document the number of bags that you had remaining at the time you placed your order and the number of bags you need with the other things. I mentioned this, you understand why we ask that you call us each week with this information. We really must adhere to the rules for proper payment under Medicare. So, Jason, conclusion, next slide, please. So basically, what does all this mean? So Medicare made some welcome changes that better align with current medical practice. It's easier to qualify for coverage, fewer details to meet, more basic language. It's mandatory that medical records document the need for parental nutrition. And I think with this new policy, most importantly, why enteral nutrition is not an option or did not work. That Medicare coverage can really provide adequate long-term coverage for parental nutrition. And it's really important to work with your provider to assist in the documentation requirements. So in closing, I wanted to mention that the home infusion industry a couple years ago reached out to Medicare for these changes. And I was actually quite impressed that they listened and made the appropriate changes to better meet the needs of the Medicare population that requires parental nutrition. I know this is a very watered down review of Medicare coverage, but if you have any questions or want any clarification, you can reach me at Jody at nutrishare.com or our phone number. I know everyone's case is different, and I can definitely help answer any questions that you have. Thank you.